Hi, I'm Conor Byrne, and this is That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you'll hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Well, today I am joined by Laura Daly and Emer Fitzmaurice of Dublin agency Folk Wunderman Thompson. Laura and Emer have joined me to talk about the Family Fallacy report that they launched earlier this month. The report shines a light on the modern family dynamic and the growth brands are missing out on by overemphasizing mum, dad, and 2.4 kids. While this report focuses on Irish family dynamics, it pulls in research from across the globe as well as showcasing examples of who is doing it well. So it really applies no matter where you are listening or watching this episode. So in this episode, we talk through some of the key findings of the report and, for me, a surprising outcome. Don't forget to subscribe to That's What I Call Marketing wherever you are listening or watching. If you enjoy the shows, please leave a rating. And if we can help you with your growth through marketing, visit that'swhaticallmarketing.com and see how we can help. Today's episode of That's What I Call Marketing is brought to you by the Indie List, Ireland's leader for freelance marketing, creative and digital talent. The Indie List provides easy access to hundreds of highly experienced and vetted experts across the marketing services business, quickly and cost effectively. You can check out their full range of services at indielist.ie. Emer and Laura, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing.
Thanks, Mel. Great to talk to you today, Conor.
Well, listen, before we start, maybe just do brief introductions. Laura, we'll start with you.
No problem. So my name's Laura Daly. I'm Managing Director and Head of Growth here in Folk Wunderman Thompson. We're a creative agency based in Dublin, and we're part of the Wunderman Thompson network, which will be in the new year rebranding to VML. We've a really wide portfolio of long-standing clients here in the agency, many big brands lots of people will know, such as Vodafone, Irish Life, Brennan's, Lidl Ireland, Vodafone, Bord Gáis Energy, just to mention a few. So we really pride ourselves on thought leadership as well. So we're delighted to take this piece of research to market recently and happy to talk to you about it today.
Brilliant. Emer.
Yeah, so I'm Emer Fitzmaurice. I'm head of planning here at Folk. So I lead a team of strategists in the agency. So, I mean, my role is primarily to make sure we're always kind of understanding all of our consumers, all the audiences, really to inspire great work. So equally really excited to get to talk to you about what has been a long journey to get this report out into the world. So yeah, really excited that people get to kind of read it and see it and discuss it, which is exciting.
Brilliant. And Laura, you touched on it there. I was going to ask, are you still called Folk Wunderman?
I know. We're able to laugh at ourselves. Don't worry. I know it's advertising agencies, all the acronyms and kind of trying to keep up with it is as hard as anything. But yeah, as of January, we will be Folk VML.
Folk
so
VML.
More on that to come in the new year.
You'll still be Folk.
Folk will stay. Yeah, we're very proud of our local Irish heritage and roots. So Folk will always stay. Yeah.
Brilliant. I like Folk. I like what that kind of gets across, right? It kind of like
it's nice and colloquial, yeah.
Just understand people.
Yeah,
we try to anyway.
And you got some great brands. I mean, you mentioned some wonderful brands there that you get to work with. I mean, the likes of, I'm a huge fan of a lot of them, but Bord Gáis Energy is like a phenomenal Irish brand. Real kind of they've done such a great job in the energy space. Brennan's I adore, like just yellow.
I know. It's so iconic, isn't it?
And obviously Vodafone, the great Rugby World Cup campaign that you just did. Anyway, we can go on. I don't want to give
Despite the results, you still did great work.
I don't want to give Carl Waters a big head saying I really love the creative, but
I know. He'll be thrilled.
Well, listen, you mentioned we wanted to chat about the Family Fallacy report that you've just released. Can you just give me a bit about what was the impetus behind putting this together?
Sure. So we have, for a number of years, been attempting to, I suppose, remove bias or unconscious bias from our work. It's something we're really conscious of. There's, a certain type of person that tends to work in advertising and marketing in this country and can potentially lead to a number of stereotypes across advertising. So a few years ago, we developed a framework called the Real Ireland Framework, which is essentially, I suppose, kind of a series of questions that we use when we are creating work, writing scripts, casting, that really just encourages us to ask questions as we make decisions to make sure we're removing the bias. And that is broadly, and has, I think, a lot of the diversity and inclusion kind of efforts over the last number of years have been pretty focused on a lot of things around kind of race, gender and ethnicity, stuff like that. But actually, a lot of the time when we came to the discussions about casting or script writing around families, we had a feeling of wanting to kind of make sure we are representing what the modern Irish family looks like, but didn't feel really totally equipped with the evidence
Yeah.
to do so. That was really why we wanted to kind of start to explore this in a bit more detail, because it felt like we ourselves were kind of living our own true day to day nuclear family. And yet that was something we were often kind of placing in our ads and something we see all the time. So that was really the trigger for it, was let's explore this and, have the evidence for ourselves, but also for our clients.
I know, Laura.
Yeah, we were starting to see some of the data coming through as well from the CSO. So we just sort of said, whilst that gives you kind of the hard facts as such, we wanted to dig deeper and put a bit more kind of, I suppose, colour around some of those stats as well.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing reading it cold, but actually, how do we then, take that information and bring us to our clients to be able to paint a deeper picture for them,
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, Laura, about that. Look, with the clients, like were clients starting to ask you about this, or were you trying to get ahead of the conversation?
A bit of both, but more so, I think the latter, in terms of, as Emer said, we could see it happening. I mean, lots of different family dynamics across the agency, amongst all our family and friends. So there's something here that we just really need to get under the skin of. So we have done a couple of sessions with our clients to take them through it, and the reaction has been super positive. And actually, in many cases, just kind of, again, they're sort of saying, yes, well, some great personal examples being brought. We had a nice roundtable discussion with a group of clients one of the days, and just, again, they were just bringing even further insight. So they're just even delighted to be starting these conversations.
Yeah, like it's interesting. And we'll get into some of the findings in the report, but you found there was a real disparity between what is shown as in advertising versus the reality. When you started looking into it, did you start to kind of unpack how that was affecting consumers?
Yeah, I think that was probably, so, apart from, I suppose, kind of the quantitative study to really, I suppose, get the data in place, we had a number of focus groups with these different family dynamics. And I think that was the most eye-opening piece for us, was talking to people about advertising, whether that be single parent families or same-sex families, or, even kind of nuclear families themselves, really saying, look, the kind of rosy, happy picture isn't accurate. I think there is potentially what can happen sometimes when advertising does tend to go out of the nuclear family dynamic. They can often kind of paint maybe single parents as being without or kind of having less than. And, there was a comment, certainly among that group in particular, that we're like, we're not defined by being single parents. Like, our lives are really full and really positive. This is one part of our entire personality. And the idea of kind of being ultimately defined by that, or that becoming the whole story, they were really keen for us to say, like, we're not unusual. Like, this is the normal for us. This isn't like this kind of anomaly. Like, stop treating it like it is. So that was, whatever data we came across, it was certainly the conversations with our audiences that was certainly an eye-opening moment for me, and something we were really keen to try and get across in our presentations, in the report, etc., so that people really kind of took what we took from those conversations.
And when I was reading some of the things that, I picked up on, like the language, right? So we've words like traditional, non-traditional. Like, I'm like, that's almost the problem, right? Like,
exactly. It starts right back at that point, because even, one of the kind of areas that we looked at within it as well was when it comes to, holidaying, and even how, hotel rooms are sold or whatever, family rooms, the 2 adults, 2 kids options. And in many cases, you're actually penalized for taking a single room financially, so it just is kind of set up wrong from the outset. So, we would hope that the findings from this will help trigger bigger conversations, not just when it gets to advertising, and that's kind of some of the conversation we've been having with our clients, that actually, guys, it's right back at kind of your proposition stage and product development stage,
That's really interesting stuff, isn't it? This goes beyond an ad and how someone might see themselves in an ad, but like how brands can actually innovate around the findings from this.
Completely, because even one of our clients, who will remain nameless, but a lovely client of ours, was sort of saying, God, even how we sell our family days for the specific events that they have, like, we really need to rethink this, because in many cases, maybe from a ticketing point of view, we just have a legacy of how we've been set up.
Yeah.
Actually, we really need to help, let these findings inform some of that. Don't get me wrong, appreciate, you're not going to change things overnight, but at least to kind of instigate and start having the conversations, I think, with some other stakeholders in her business. I think that the report certainly armed her with the case to do so, which is brilliant.
Totally.
And Emer, when you were looking at that, and even getting into this report, did that even cross your mind that may be an outcome, or was, that we may actually be able to influence product or solutions that our clients offer beyond just how we change what our ads look like?
Funnily enough, we were very privileged to have worked on a few clients with a few clients over the last number of years, kind of on some innovation projects. And admittedly, there was kind of green shoots of this that we started to see even a few years ago, because actually, when you start to discuss products and services and the use of them in homes, the minute you kind of go into people's homes and you start to explore it, you realize nothing is as straightforward, as simple as we would design it to be or like it to be when we talk about it. So I think there was like an opportunity maybe that we felt could emerge from the report. Nothing probably prepared us for the majority of the conversations, actually, when we've been in the room with clients, have really triggered a thought of, I want to bring this to our segment team or a proposition team or our insights team to really challenge what is unfortunately just, I suppose, an acceptance of what we think family looks like, but actually it could be a way broader opportunity for how we, act in service of our audiences and create more meaningful solutions for them. There's a whole section in the report about the war on home and the challenges and tensions that are now existing in, numbers of generations living within one household. That's an enormous opportunity for any utility brand to start to serve solutions for.
Yeah, it's one thing. So get into some of the kind of the detail of the report. So one of the findings was that traditional family, excuse the language, but it represents 36% of households. But I think you found like majority of ads that we see out in the market are showing that traditional 2.4, family that we're used to. And great examples of, maybe it's holidays in a brochure and you just see the mom, the dad, and all, beautiful, smiley, happy people as well, which is like problematic. No dad bod
in the
there.
first place. Matching swimming costumes.
Yeah. But that you found like massive over representation of that family dynamic, and only 36% could really relate to that.
Exactly. And I suppose that was the biggest indicator, was like, okay, well, we have to ask the question, who's talking to the other 64%? And I suppose fundamentally as well, I suppose that there's a massive opportunity there, though, for brands and the clients we work with, because if they feel at the moment that 64% aren't being served, then if we were to do that in a really, I suppose, helpful, creative way, then we could unlock major growth for clients within that space.
And just to add to that as well, I suppose that, it's 36%, only 36% of households. So actually starting to think beyond the concept of a family, and start to think of the concept of a household, that it's of private homes. What's the makeup of that? As a prime example, like myself and my partner have no intention of having kids, but we will still live in a household.
Yeah.
But it's not something that's ever reflected in the types of communication. So really, even in one of the conversations we had with one of the journalists that we were speaking to, she said, I'm a single individual in a household. Like, my whole life is centered around me, myself, and I. And that is a completely untold narrative in both the products and services that are provided and in the advertising talking to her. So, it's actually, as Laura said, this like huge kind of eye-opening opportunity.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of ask you about that, because I was going to come to it later on, but the families or households that don't and won't have kids, and the choice of that as well being actually a choice. Do you know what I mean? Like, that came across to me when I was reading it. There seems to be this, almost slight nod of the head. Oh, you know, right?
Yeah, I know, because I mean, Alice and I was very open myself with the team when we were talking. I struggled to have a family initially. It was something I wanted, but just wasn't happening as quickly. And kind of that interrogation. And actually, in many cases, it was coming from women as well, who you would think might be more tuned into things. But actually, it was kind of, on more than one occasion, it was sort of suggested to me that, am I putting kind of my career first
Right.
and whatnot? And, in almost an accusatory sort of tone. And, as Emer says, she is one of those people who wants to be child free by choice.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It is a choice. And I think, I don't get me wrong, not in all cases. Some people, unfortunately, aren't lucky enough to have the choice. But, I just don't think that people should be treated with disdain. I think it needs to be positioned that actually this is a really positive thing in somebody's life as well. And actually, there's so much they can do. And there's brands that have nothing to do with children that are well suited to people who want to live a child-free life. And actually, brands can capitalize on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
the number, like 79% of people in Ireland agree that you don't have to have kids to be a family. Like, that's an overwhelming majority of people. I was shocked to see that because, my experience of walking around society day to day wouldn't suggest that type of statistic. So, it's really having finally kind of the data to say, actually, we have full permission to present this as the true new normal now.
Yeah. Yeah. You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing, a partnership with the Indie List, where you will find experienced and vetted marketing talent, people like me, and also people who design and people who write. You get the idea. Check out theindielist.ie.
You are listening to That's What I Call Marketing. Do you need help growing your business through marketing? Well, check out our services at that'swhaticallmarketing.com. Get in touch today and see how we can help.
It goes back, like it harks back to me, and I'll age myself here rapidly, but the days of Glenroe when, Niddy and Miley got married, and then Diddy in the pub going, anything's starting, and like that was the, the question. He's like, oh, she's like, but that's not that long ago. It's long enough ago. But that's kind of the narrative I think of, couple, and then it's anything starting.
Yeah, completely. And it's, you just think in this day and age, God, is that even a question you should even be asking, But listen, I understand why historically it's been the case, but I suppose if ever it's just that eye-opener for people that it isn't always the case, guys.
One of the other things you talked about, the wicked stepmother trope, I found that really fascinating. And you highlighted the reframing of it, which is around the words bonus mom and bonus dad. I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That's such a, more positive way of looking, and talking about it.
And what that tells us, and I think what we felt really passionately about, is that, that's obviously such a prevalent norm now. And there's such a positive feeling around being a blended family that, like, whether society names these people or not, they're going to name themselves. And I think, that signaled to us a real requirement that we need to really be listening to what's going on with that 64%. If they themselves are calling themselves bonus families and bonus parents, that's absolutely the narrative that should be reflected in how we serve their needs and how we talk about them within advertising and talk to them, like the want to move past where we have been as a society is being driven by people themselves.
Yeah.
It's not something that we ourselves are actually kind of talking about. So that was a real, I think, moment, even in the conversations with those people. They are really excited about the positive framing of it, and they want more people to know that this is a good thing and not a negative.
Yes, yeah. And I don't know if it's uniquely Irish, but the other thing that came up in the report was the adult child, right? So the adult still living at home. Is that uniquely Irish, or have you seen that in other places?
I don't know the exact stats to support it, but I think, definitely given that home owning in Ireland has been the cultural norm, I think it's probably more prevalent than that kind of rental culture.
Yeah.
I think it's for that reason. But there was some great work done. There was a Westpac example in Australia called Old Flatties, which it was just so funny, where there was a household who were renting together in their 70s, and just showcasing that for a financial service product they had. It was just done in a really funny way, and just to show that that is a reality there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting to see. But as Emer says, then it's yourself. If there's multiple generations living in the one home, they all have different needs. They're at a different life stage. So different brands are serving them at different moments in time.
One of the things, again, going through everything, I was like, how do you get this right, in your ads, and not just kind of tokenism is the wrong word, but there's a
I know
risk of getting it wrong, I think, and just kind of saying, well, okay, so we're not going to do this family, we'll do this family. What's your advice, and what are the conversations have you been having with clients about kind of getting it right in terms of that part?
Yeah, well, I think that you did use the term tokenism. I think some clients are definitely nervous of falling into that territory. And for us, what we've sort of focused on is that it's actually the human stories that are happening within a dynamic, and actually that's what it's important. And through our creative work, if we're bringing them to life in a really honest, open, and sometimes fun way, then that story can be told in a natural way that doesn't come across as being tokenistic.
Absolutely. I think, look, everyone is very nervous of being tokenistic. And I think that particularly comes when, you're telling, a story that is somewhat, maybe a bit kind of more unexpected. And then all of a sudden the people that are featuring in it are equally as unexpected. And I think that question is it about, the story we're telling or the people we're featuring? And I think that's often the big tension. What we've also found is, in some of the ads that are most entertaining and actually, I suppose, most progressive in their portrayal, just because they're telling a story of a particular kind of unique set of individuals, it doesn't make it any less relatable to everybody else. A real human emotive story is going to connect with everyone in some way. And I think, as Laura said, being very true to the really powerful human story and it being a credible kind of narrative for the brand, that's the things to focus on as the fundamentals, and you'll avoid featuring for featuring's sake, I guess.
And that's a great way of putting it. Featuring for featuring's sake is, I think, where you don't want to get, because I think then what you end up getting is kind of just vanilla, right? Like it becomes a smorgasbord of everything. We're trying to please everybody. We're trying to tick every single box, make sure everything's perfect, and we offend nobody, and then you just get into real vanilla territory, unfortunately. And I think lots of us can think of lots of examples where we see that. So I think you're hitting on that, like what's the story we need to tell that's going to really connect with people, and then they'll connect with that, right? And whoever is delivering it.
Exactly.
Because by trying to avoid offending anyone, you potentially connect with no one.
No one.
Which is the greatest risk of all our time and efforts, and certainly our investment. So that's, I think, what we're always trying to avoid, and we absolutely appreciate the level of caution required.
And I guess, how go back maybe to the start of how do we normalize this, and almost to the point that this shouldn't show up in a brief, in a sense of one of the questions being, what kind of family do we show? How do we get that?
Well, it's kind of some of the kind of recommendations that we made in the Facts Report was, I suppose, it probably starts first and foremost from an employer point of view in terms of culturally within an organization. Are we asking ourselves the right questions? So, how do you kind of prioritize your diversity and inclusion policy or hiring policy, HR, and including colleagues with different perspectives and different family perspectives, within, as we touched on up front, that kind of proposition development piece, so that you are a bit challenging, going, okay, is this going to appeal? Is it fit for purpose? And, a lot of organizations are probably well underway with unconscious bias training as well, and making sure that that's regular, something that we do here in Folk quite a lot as well, just to make sure we're always kind of checking ourselves. So I think it starts way back there. And I suppose it's having that throughout the process. As you said, Emer, within proposition testing, even with some clients where we've developed propositions out, we've tested with those different types of audiences that we may not have done if it was 10 years ago doing the same ask. Do you know what I mean? and then right through the production process as well. When it gets down to cast and feature, I think, to be honest, I think we have been a bit more maybe pointy at that point in the process to make sure, actually, guys, are we being truly representative here? And then, as I say, once we get into our actually comms at the end as well.
Yeah. And one thing that we've learned actually as a result of doing this, I suppose, body of work, is that we've also come across a number of reports and data that evidences, I suppose, the actual importance of positive portrayal of groups on performance of advertising. So it has given us real permission with, I suppose, kind of having better conversations with clients about why it's important. So there's an excellent report referenced within our own report from Kantar, which indicates that, positive portrayal actually has nearly a 45% positive impact on the performance of the advertising when done correctly. So, we also are very much appreciate that our ads will be better by actually, taking a really vested interest in the way that we're telling our stories to make the ads better as well. So the more evidence we have, the better decisions we can also make.
Yeah, I was going to ask you I was going to ask you about that in terms of the commercial side of it, because the thing that makes anyone stand up and pay attention
is the data and the numbers
and commerciality. Like, is this going to be better for my business?
Absolutely. It does have 45 percentage points higher in terms of performance. And also within that study, we saw that advertising that challenges those stereotypes are 25% more likely to perform on brand metrics as well, which in turn will have a commercial impact also. So I think one of the takeaways for us as well is working with a lot of the research agencies that work with our various different clients as well on how we can start building some of these metrics in as well and track them over time, because ultimately what we'd love to be doing, Connor, is in a few years, even 5 years time, sitting here with you having a conversation down, look at the impact that this has driven.
Yeah. And again, I think that goes back to maybe again what we talked about before, is like not just in an ad, but in product and proposition, all the areas of a business it can have an impact. You've lots of great examples in the report. Who do you think is doing it well?
So I think there's a handful of advertisers doing an excellent job, but there's lots of room for everyone to do better. I think one particular piece that stands out, for me, was Ford, who have done this really, partly indulgent, but really phenomenal 16-minute film on this kind of story of a family going through divorce, and actually the role that the car plays through these kind of moments of conflict. And it was this moment in time where we saw the work and thought, God, no one ever thinks about what happens to a product when a family is going through a divorce. And this place that has once been the kind of home of joy is now actually kind of taking part in an enormous conflict. But it was the storytelling throughout the whole piece and a very raw, real version of what families go through.
We're not perfect. We're proud of some of the progress that we've made. Irish Life Health is one of the examples that we would have included as well, and that we've launched there recently. They came to market with a proposition to support female health. So the whole spectrum, right back to kind of pre-period stage, right through to menopause. And, we would have done that in a really nice but progressive way with Irish Life Health as well. And they've already just seen really, really positive results on the back of that campaign, and lots more exciting work to come on that next year as well. But yeah, the report really is, we're proud to bring it to market, but we also, want to use it as a bit of a rallying cry to a lot of our colleagues and peers across the industry. We're more than happy to kind of share the findings with anyone. We're kind of done some sessions with our sister agency Group M, because one of the kind of key things that landed when we were doing a client roundtable session was media agencies, guys, need to know this as well, because they buy, if you think of how they buy housekeepers with kids, in terms of audiences as well, that's quite a traditional. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that buying is massively much more sophisticated than it used to be, but those terms are still used to this day, and those audiences are still bought. So it's good to be able to, I suppose, bring it into different sectors as well.
It is very progressive. I think that you took the time, you said a lot of time to get to this and dig into it. And push the conversation. Because like with all these things, and we've talked about this, it's making everyone better. Like this isn't just a folk wonderment
completely.
thing. This isn't just for you, about you. Yes, it's going to benefit you and your clients brilliantly, but it's about us as an industry doing better and raising the bar. And we've, you've talked about it. There's evidence that says it'll make your work more effective. These are all things we all want. So, it's great.
It's a win-win for everybody, really.
It really is. And it's, I was going to ask, what can somebody do with this? But actually, I mean, as we've talked, there's so many small, simple things that a marketer can do. But if they want to, if someone listening wants to go and kind of dig into this a bit more, is there somewhere they can go and find out more detail about the report?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they go to our website, folkwondermantompson.ie, there is a link there, and they can express their interest, and we'd be more than happy to have a conversation and share the report. No problem.
Brilliant. Well, look, it's a fantastic. Thank you for sharing the report with me. I really enjoyed reading it. I thought there was just incredible insights, of course, but just action that you can take from it. And, as we've talked about here, it's not about just kind of ticking a box and saying, right, we've got a different family in this ad. It's going back to the start. It's thinking about it. And again, as you said, the opportunity for businesses to think about how they show up, not just in an ad, but in what they offer to consumers is phenomenal. And this is, driving people to think about that. And the commercial gains for it, we're in a commercial business, so is there. So yeah.
This is it. This
Absolutely.
is
it. The more people that you can connect with, the greater the opportunity is. And really, we're trying to be as much in service to that as we can.
Brilliant. Emer, Laura, thank you so much for joining me. Really delighted to go through this with you. Yeah, appreciate your time.
Great, Conor. Thanks for having us. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Well, I hadn't expected when we started this to hear how this report is driving change across businesses. Well, started out as something that was looking at how families are being depicted in advertising and pushing for change there, has the potential to have a much further reach and impact in a business. Thinking about the products, how you position them in the market, really has incredible impact. And as you heard from Laura and Emer, while yes, this is something that helps position folk as a thought leader, they really want to help elevate the work we were all doing. So do get in touch with them. folkwt.ie will get you to their site. Well, for now, until the name changes, I guess. Well, that is it for today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to That's What I Call Marketing, wherever you are listening or watching. We are on Instagram, That's What I Call Marketing. You can get all the videos on YouTube, That's What I Call Marketing. Twitter, that's _marketing. And we're on LinkedIn as well, actually. Yeah, That's What I Call Marketing. If we can help you with your growth through marketing, visit that'swhatIcallmarketing.com and see how we can help. Thanks again to the Indie List for their support of this show. If you need experienced, excellent marketing talent, go to theindielist.ie. Don't go anywhere else. theindielist.ie.